back to Ultra Uncovered. I'm Russell Ditzworth, and I'm joined by Corinne Chalvoy. And today we've got a Fireroad episode for you all to listen to. The Run Rabbit Run 100-mile race just finished up in Steamboat Springs this last weekend. And Corinne, you were on course there, um, watching and supporting Graham.
I was.
But you were, and but what are we going to talk about today then? So we're going to kind of download the race,
Yeah.
talk about some of the interesting things that happened, and yeah, we're excited to come back to you with a Fire Road episode.
Yeah, we got a number of questions from listeners or thoughts, observations about this interesting 100-miler that has one of the largest prize purses in ultra running that we know of, yet doesn't always draw a really deep field. I think this year it did, on both the men's and women's side, and it's increasingly gotten stronger from a competition standpoint over, the last few years, I would say. But that is one of the questions, is kind of like, why aren't more elites showing up to this race that has a $15,000 first place reward and pays down to seventh place? Plus, there's all kinds of additional things on top of that. There's a team competition where if you're the winning team with the lowest combined time, you win another $5,000. I learned that $5,000 doesn't have to be split evenly between the man and the woman. And Fred, the race director, actually said that most of the time the women are placing higher than the man in that situation. So he thinks that maybe they should be getting more of that. It was kind of funny. But they have a team competition. They have a master's premium. They did something interesting this year and added an additional $1,000 reward to the person who's the first to the top of the ski hill at the very beginning of the race. So the race starts at the base in the village of Steamboat Ski Resort and essentially climbs about 4,000 feet in the first 5.5 miles or so. So you just basically go straight up.
And the gondola is what, like halfway up that climb?
3/4 of the way.
3/4. Okay, so most of the
Yeah.
way, the steep part of the way up that climb.
Yeah, and that's single track, or you're
Right.
just on the
Oh,
on the
just on the
straight
slope.
slope, and then you get onto the road and you run up. So the last part of it before you hit that first aid station in Mount Werner. So yeah, it's a very interesting race. I towed the line last year and dropped about mile 50 due to some foot and a really funky toenail situation that I won't like share the details on because it's pretty gross. But yeah, I have some thoughts. It's a beautiful race, but it is uniquely challenging. So we're going to get into some of that. We're going to talk about what went down this year in terms of the men's and women's field. Russ, you're wearing the shirt. What's been your experience? You've run the 50.
I've run the 50-miler. I ran that back in 2021, the same year as a few other folks from Castle Rock Run Club, and the same year that Todd Dill and Steve Swanson ran the 100-mile, and got finishes those years, or that year. And it's this year was, I think Fred said, it was the 17th year for the 50 and the 12th year for the 100.
Yep.
And the 100, for at least the last 10 or 12 years, has been this large prize purse event. And this year, I think you said it was 15,000 to the winner. I think they had up to 75,000 just in top sevens on either side. And then they had additional monies for the team competition and for these other items. So I think they had like something like $100,000 out to athletes, which is absolutely a unique feature for a race. It's one of the biggest in definitely the biggest in ultra running that I'm aware of. Straight away, I mean, even UTMB I think is not necessarily right away just the prize purse pieces of it as much as that.
Yeah, I think also unique that all of the proceeds from the race go back to local businesses within Steamboat. So the race directors essentially are not making any money off of the event. It's either going back to the community or to the athletes. And we did hear in some pre-race stuff that was some people's reason for running the race was because of how it, is kind of unique in those ways. So, yeah, so it is uh, I heard someone say, kind of one of the classic Mountain West hundreds. When you think of them, it is a 1 p.m. start for the hares division. Hares
Yep.
division is the fast runners that are planning to. I should say fast runners because there are some fast tortoises as well. But those who want to compete for the prize money have to start at 1 p.m. They used to start at noon. They've moved it an hour later. They start 4 hours after the tortoise division. And I was at the start line of both of the races, and there were more spectators at the beginning of the tortoise race because there's more people in it. And that was kind of cool. I mean, it was kind of
More family
interesting.
and friends.
Yeah, the friends, and we're all out there. And so I went out there. We had our friend Brad Davis, who's also run this. He ran it 2 years ago as well, and started last year, dropped, but came back again and was in the tortoise division. So went out to watch him start. And yeah, it's I don't know, that 1 p.m. start is something that some people really like. It's something that some people don't, but it is, kind of in between. It's a little bit akin to a URA 100 start. It's not UTMB where it starts at 6 p.m., but it is late enough that the intention is that everyone will have to run through the night.
Yeah,
So kind of,
absolutely.
yeah, equaling the playing field for all of the athletes out there. And another factor is that the hares are not allowed to use pacers. So no pacers. You can have crew, but I would say this is a race where you don't see your crew very much. I mean, you can, if you go to Dry Lake twice, you can see them 5 times. But if you don't go to Dry Lake, which a lot of people don't, it's pretty much like 3 times that you see your runner.
You go to
So
Olympian, and then where else do you go to crew?
Fish Creek is the first
Okay.
crew spot. That's just under 20 miles in. But then they go do a full 50K before getting back to Olympian the first time. And that's around mile 50. Then they go do Lane of Pain, another 12-ish miles. Then they come back to Olympian. You see them for the second time there. And then unless you go to Dry Lake, which is around mile 70, you wouldn't see your runner again. And like, for example, I wasn't going to go to Dry Lake, and Graham had, about 35 gels to pack in his vest to go
Oh my gosh.
from Olympian to all the way to the finish, because essentially it's 38-ish miles.
I
It's a
mean,
long time.
he could have had a drop bag though at one of those spots,
Yes, you
correct?
can have drop bag at Summit.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, but and clothes and headlamp and all that if you want. But if you don't want to stop, yeah, it's very interesting, I guess, kind of just a solo effort in a bit of a way.
So this race, I mean, it does have a decent drop rate. What do you think contributes to that in terms of this particular race and the challenges that it presents?
Yeah, so we got a couple of questions. So just digging into the questions, and then maybe we'll go through the results here. But
Yeah.
one question came to us: why such a high DNF rate? Wait, before we go into the questions, what are you drinking, Russell Ditzworth?
Oh. So today I have got a Hoplark Citra,
Okay,
the yellow can. This is their 0.0 line. This has Citra hops in it. It's sort of the medium hoppiness.
nice.
And it's I'll open it right now. It's a great flavor, very refreshing. One of my favorites on the 0.0 line. I also like the sour out of this line, but this one's another good one.
Yeah, so Hoplark, I was checking out their site, and they do have like an Oktoberfest right now. But I really want to try this vanilla bean sparkling water. And you said you've
I
tried
had
it.
to go
It's a
on.
good
It's
one.
very good. Yes.
I mean, for someone who doesn't love the beer and the super hoppy flavor, I feel like that might be kind of more my speed. So
All of the sparkling waters are very mild in terms
nice.
of just the hoppiness. You get a little bit of it, a hint of it in a couple of them, but the vanilla bean one's really good. I think you'd like that one.
Awesome. Yeah. So they have the 0.0, they have the waters, they have
Tea.
the teas.
Yes.
Yeah. That are kind of brewed like a tea, but they also have hops in them, right?
Yep.
So yeah, all
And
kinds of
and
options.
then they do like a seasonal or like special run type.
Yeah.
drinks. Like they had the one that I liked from previous. They had like a breakfast beer one and a Mexican lager one that were both like very good, 16-ounce cans, very
Yeah, I
tasty.
tried the Mexican lager. It was pretty good too.
Yep.
I enjoyed that one for sure.
They've got good
Cool.
marketing too. It's always fun to see what they do on the cans and stuff. So
Yeah,
very
they
good.
have good artists and their logo. Yeah, definitely looks like a runner bird. So, um, yeah, we're loving Hoplark. Great option for when you want to have something non-alcoholic. Cool. So getting back into the kind of the questions, why such a high DNF rate for the hares? It's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a really I don't know, it's a really tough one to answer because like on paper and even when you're out there, there's nothing that's like extremely crazy about this race. Like elevation gain, they advertise 20 to 22,000. Some people say 18, some people say 16. We've seen various GPS files, but it's not like it's Hard Rock where it's 33,000 feet,
Nope.
right? Um, it's high altitude for some people,
Hmm.
but it's not Leadville. It ranges between 6,000 and 11,000, 10,000. So you're below 8,000 feet for a decent amount of it. Which yes is high for people coming from sea level and definitely could affect you, I think. But when you're looking at the extremes of high altitude, right? It's not particularly crazy. I think that running through the night aspect is probably one thing that makes it difficult. Along with that is the temperature swings.
That's what I was
Um,
gonna say was just the
yeah,
big, you start out and it's hot, right? Right
yeah.
away. It's gonna be hot the entire afternoon. And then the sun goes down and it cools down really quickly. I mean, they might have gotten down into the 20s even, overnight up high. And
I
if you're
think
not
maybe the
specifically
teens.
ready for that, like
Yeah.
that can mess with you. Your system can be messed with, and then the GI system and eating and just all of the things kind of compound, right? When you're at a high effort level and you're trying to deal with highly variable environmental conditions.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I went up to kind of meet Graham. We'll talk about his race a little bit, but there's this like kind of creek path that is really like socked in by trees, and it was very cold in there, and that was near town, and it was only at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it felt like it was like single digits. It was
Mm,
very chilly, so I think there's also like maybe pockets of cold temperatures here and there. There can be weather. There wasn't precipitation, snow, rain this year. There can be those conditions. I think that one factor that might play into this is that after you do the Lane of Pain and you come back to Olympian Hall, so you're around mile 62, you have like 5,000 feet of climbing ahead of
yeah.
you.
Yep.
And it is over like a 20-mile section, but at the same time, it's like it's late enough in the race that that's that's hard. I mean, that's
Oh
it's and
yeah.
it's tough, like underfoot conditions, like big boulders, kind of some crazy like rockiness, middle pitch black, right, or middle of the night for most people. And I think that kind of just where that climbing comes at that point in the course is definitely one factor because we see a lot of people drop at Dry Lake or Summit Lake on the way back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you
Any
want to
other
do a
thoughts?
do you want to do a quick rundown of where people landed this year, just in case
Sure.
folks haven't seen some of the results, because these are
Yeah.
the folks that took home the money from Run Rabbit Run this year.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with the women. So, after leading most of the race, Leah Yingling actually ended up in second place. She was passed by Emily Mann pretty late. I think I saw reports of it being even around mile 90. So, Emily Mann, British Columbia, shorter distance athlete. And she also broke the course record, beat Michelle Yates' record by more than 27 minutes. She ran 19:48. Leah Yingling, who, I feel like this course was very much made for Leah. She's just great at this kind of terrain, and she was running super strong all day. She took second. Shea Aquilano did come in third, but was later disqualified. We'll talk about that. Barrett Gray ended up then being in third. Nicole Lofton, Stacy Marion, Sandy Nypaver, and Michelle Yates rounded out the top 7 for the women.
It was only a few minutes off of the previous course record.
That's right. I think she was like 3 or 5 minutes over the previous course record. So
Which
two very
had stood since 2013.
Yeah.
So,
I think 2013.
quite a few women had taken a crack at that. Addie Bracey was close one year.
Yep.
And so it's just
Annie Hughes ran one year. Michelle Yates tried to break her own record multiple times during that, period of time. So yeah, it's a big deal for a shorter, someone who's doing their 100-mile debut. They figured out that, Emily figured out that she's got a talent for that. So that's awesome to see.
and first woman under 20 hours at Run Rabbit.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing.
Pretty cool.
All right, let me run down the men. So out in front, second time winner of this race, Rich Lockwood, who's got Run Rabbit just figured out, kind of goes away winning here. There was a lot of back and forth very early in the race, but around Olympian, he was clearly ahead, and he and Adam Loomis put some distance between themselves and kind of the rest of the men's field. I think at one point late in the race, it was Rich and Adam, and then the next 5 runners were all tied coming into a certain aid station. So Rich Lockwood with a big win, 17:24. He was ahead of Adam Loomis, who finished in second at 18:12. And then Christopher Hammis, who's doubled back off of a win at High Lonesome, comes in third here. Tyler Green, who a lot of folks had potentially winning this race, ran really well, ran 19:09 after kind of being up in the very front early on in the race. Nicholas Lightbody, Canadian. Nico? Okay, goes by Nico. Great.
Yeah.
1934 for a 5th place finish, and I believe that he was paired with Emily for the team event. So again, another instance where Emily carried the team to a victory there. We'll go ahead and call that.
First and fifth beating out second and fourth. So
first and fifth beating out second and fourth, and the difference was maybe just 7 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 7 minutes.
Yeah, and it's combined time for the team the team score, not scored like cross country or something. It's just combined times. Then we have Aaron Slaybach, 19:34.55, so less than a minute behind Nico. And then Clint Anders rounded out the top 7, the money placings at Run Rabbit, with a 7th place finish there, 19:47. So all the top men under 20 hours there.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, is that we're just seeing I feel like we're just seeing kind of these more condensed top 10s in a lot of these races. I mean, I think Nicole, maybe Barrett, Nicole, Stacy, and Sandy were all on the final descent. So the way that the race ends is with a 6-mile downhill, pretty significant downhill, again, down the road of the ski area. And I think they were all on that descent at the same time. So, I mean, talk about having to find your legs at the end of a 100-miler to be able to pound downhill. That could be the difference between 4th and 7th. And then, Nico and Aaron, it'd be interesting to look at some of those split times. I did take a look at, I think I looked at Emily's, and they weren't crazy. They were like, they were great. They were like 8s down that. But I know that our friend Brad Davis ran a 6:47 on one of those miles. So
he competed in the tortoise division and ran 27 hours, beat his previous time by over an hour, and he did run a 97th mile 6:47. So,
Yeah.
um, unlike going up the mountain where you're cross country going up the ski slope or whatever, when you come down the road the whole way. And it is
Yeah.
smooth, perfectly graded. You're losing 300 feet a mile. It's,
Yeah.
it hurts if you don't have quads anymore, but I mean, you can move on it really, really well.
Totally.
So some of those miles are probably the fastest miles of the race for a lot of folks.
Yep. Yeah, I famously remember because I stayed in the house with Tara Dower, and she told me that what she was telling herself, because she won the race last year, was to break her knees.
Oh
Just
God.
break your knees, break your knees. I'm like, I have never said that to myself. It's the difference between me and Tara Dower. She wants to break her knees on the final descent. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're gonna embrace it, go for it. Like that's some competitive spirit right there. I love it. So yeah. Um, so the overall pretty fast times. I mean, top seven. Interestingly, I think that the man who ended up in 10th place was someone who was running with Graham for a lot of the race, and he moved up like 25 spots in the last like 30 miles. It's just something you can do at this race. It's because there is a ton of attrition. So maybe just to mention, we did see about 35 or so drops out
Hmm.
of maybe the 100 hares, which is a fair amount. Not crazy. I mean, 50% drop, 50 to 60% drop rate at something like Leadville. You don't have to have a qualifier to run Rabbit Run. There's a lottery system, or it sells out quickly, I should say, but you do not have to have a previous qualifier that I'm aware of to do it. So some of the notable drops that come to mind. Graham Chavoy, rest in peace, Graham. Graham's going to get his 100-mile finish at some point
He will.
here. Feel so bad for him. His, maybe a stomach virus, maybe still figuring out the hydration sodium situation, but really his body just shut down around mile 50. I mean, I'm going to just pull up the list again here on other drops, but Claire Gallagher dropped, for example.
And she was up to second, like halfway through the race. Like she and Leah left Olympian won very close together.
Yep,
Um,
she was
so
definitely in it for sure. Sean Van Horn, who was kind of going for it, he dropped very early, actually at the top of the gondola. He had COVID,
oh no,
and
okay.
I think just gave it a go, and then it wasn't happening, so he pulled the plug. We had Kyle Pietari drop as
Yep,
well.
yep, I heard that.
Unfortunate. Stephen Cornelius, Ashley Paulson dropped fairly, actually later than I thought. Well, Olympian the first time, so right around the halfway mark. I also saw fan favorite Andy Glaze drop, and
Yeah,
Andy was trying to do something crazy and run. Because I just looked at his ultra sign up, the
it
amount of
was it
hundreds he's
was
already
it was
run here.
4 mountain hundreds in 8 weeks. It started with Crazy Mountain in Wyoming, and then he went to Leadville, and it
Yep.
was Leadville, UTMB, Run Rabbit Run.
Run.
So that
Yeah.
was the last three were really in a month, probably 4 weeks separating those. And the comment that I saw he make was like basically the heart was in it, the mind wanted to, but the legs were just saying this was the limit. And so, yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I saw him at Packet Pickup, and I said, "What are you doing here?" Because I knew he had just run UTMB, and then I actually saw him running into Olympian, and man, it was the epitome of an ultra shuffle. And I was like, maybe this is just what Andy Glaze looks like in these races, and what happens. And then to find out he dropped it was, yeah, that was unfortunate, but yeah, he seemed to be at peace with it. I mean, kudos to him for going for it. That's an
yeah,
insane
he was going
attempt.
for a big challenge and, came to the last one and it just wasn't there. So
Yeah,
he met his
yeah,
limit for the summer. He still kept
yep,
his streak though. So he's still got the 100 miles a week streak
yep,
going.
exactly. Becca Bramley dropped as well. Emily Caldwell, who was running near the front for a lot of the beginning part of the race, ended up dropping at Dry Lake around mile 70. and Joey DeFeo, who was the first to the top of the gondola, he actually ended up dropping. And second to the top of the gondola was the winner of the race, Rich Lockwood.
Yeah.
So he also won an extra 1,000 for being the second fastest to the top. Michelle Yates also was the first woman and wins 1,000 because she did finish the race. That's the requirement there. You have to complete the race. Yeah, my friend Rachel Lemke, Colorado Springs, also felt for her. Her stomach also turned, which is such a bummer because she'd been put in really great training. So really hard to see that. And then I don't know, do you want to just touch on the kind of Shea Aquilano situation real quick?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it sounds to me like we talked a little bit about this, that that she actually missed a small section of the trail. And I'm not familiar with that exact area, but it sounded like uh, she was able to kind of submit like her GPX file. They were able to cross-reference it with the actual route and determine that she missed 2 miles of the course in a certain spot. And, regardless of like if somebody guided you the wrong way, or it's obviously the runner's responsibility to complete the full course, the way it's outlined. And it's a really sad situation to miss, relatively speaking, a small percentage of the overall race. But I think that the race organization has no choice but to disqualify in that kind of a circumstance.
Yeah, it's it's a tough one because that Lane of Pain loop out of Olympian kind of has a lollipop extension on it. And I think, according to her Instagram, she said that she was told by an aid station worker to go down instead of going up. I don't know if that individual maybe thought she'd already completed the loop because then she would have gone down,
Right.
or what. And then thinking about having the GPX file on your watch, does it tell you that you missed that section or not, because you technically are still on the course even if you didn't do this little loop? So it is a super, dark, super tough situation. Feel really bad because this was a great performance by Shea. But to your point, I think that, it's the only kind of fair solution to it. And I think regardless, of kind of what's ending up as the result on paper, Shea showed that she can run a very strong 100-miler. It'll probably light a fire in her, and she will probably never miss a turn at a race ever again in her life, I would guess.
If the scenario were different, and let's say she had no GPX file, she was just out there, no watch, running the race, and it was her word against somebody else, I think at that point the race has to take her word for it. It has to take
That's
the
a
racer's
good
word for it.
point.
Strava
If
has come back and bit people in the butt numerous times. Maybe it's maybe it's not
so,
the best to have
yeah.
a GPX file on these things.
That is very interesting. And I think, I guess it came came up because maybe somebody, saw her like miss that section and then reported it. But to your point, like what if there's no GPS? What if you're wearing a Timex?
Right, right. Well, I have seen it before in a short trail race where a runner missed like part of a section, cut off like maybe a tenth of a mile, and the only way people saw it was because their track was different than others on Strava. And
Mhm.
it became known after the fact, after GPX. It was
Yeah.
not a complaint during the event, it was a complaint after the fact. And they
When somebody
basically
went
had to go
reviewed
back.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had to go back and make a correction. You've
Yeah.
got the data there that says that that's what happened. I mean, I don't think you have any other choice as a race org. But it is interesting. And, for Shea, I really hope that this doesn't, obviously it's a bummer. It feels like you put in all this effort, you had a great performance, and you're not getting the result for it. But she ran a great race. She ran
Yes.
herself into third, and I just hope that she's able to to kind of have that next performance that really lights everybody up, just about that. Because she's been around, she's done Black Canyon a number of times, and I think
Yep.
she's been
Dropped from
talked about
Javelina.
as an upcoming star in this
Yeah.
sport. And the future is bright for her. So hopefully, the next one she's able to get some redemption off of that.
Yeah, she's super young. She's total sweetheart. So yeah, just hoping that she can just take the positives and like mourn the loss of it and work through that and kind of just, but I do think there was an outpouring of support from the community. She, kind of mentioned that I have so many friends I didn't even know I had that have come
Yeah,
out to, support her. And I think it's just something that everyone can kind of relate to. Like they could see themselves in that situation, or they've
easily.
made a wrong turn and they've added I know I've added miles to races, and it's just like, guys, it's so tough. And so it's just like community shows up no matter what happens. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really hard too, right? And you think about like what's the rule in a trail race when you go off course? It's like, well, you have to go back to the point where you got off course and recontinue. And the extra miles, it's a bummer, but you just have that's the
Yeah.
ethos. And generally that's the way that the rules are written as well in
Yeah.
most trail races.
I mean, we saw that in Cocodona this year, string bean going the wrong direction
Oh
on
yeah,
a,
he was just
and
going
he didn't
backwards
know
along the
until he
course.
he didn't know until he hit another runner. And it's like,
Jeff
it
Browning, who knew
yeah,
exactly which direction to go. He's like, "You're going the wrong way."
yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so we'll get into a few more questions here. But before we talk about the questions, was there anything that surprised you about the race this year, or that was kind of,
I'll tell
unique?
you something that continues to surprise me, and it's year over year with Run Rabbit is that I always feel like there are some women and some men in the tortoise division that should probably be competing in the hares. And, especially for the women's division, you mentioned women's division and the men's division, right? You said the men's division, like somebody that was running in 25th eventually made their way into the money by running a consistent and complete
Mhm.
race. I'll turn this back around onto you. What expected time do you think that you should, if you're thinking of an expected time
Yeah.
at Run Rabbit, what's that threshold to where you think you should try to be in the hares division versus the tortoise division?
Okay, so I will answer that, but I think that one factor here is that you have so much more daylight, and I mean, I think you can move faster in the daylight. So you have 4 more hours of daylight to be running. Now you do have maybe more heat too if you're a tortoise. But how much is that daylight worth? How much is being able to have a pacer, multiple pacers worth, in
Yeah,
terms
that's
of
true.
time? And so
You
I
can,
think that,
I agree. You can't compare times. You can't say
yeah,
you ran this in the tortoise, so you should be a hare. They're totally
right.
different races. I totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah. I think if you think realistically, um, as a woman that you might be able to run 24, 25 hours, I think you should be a hare.
I
I
think you
think you
should give it a
should,
go for
I think
sure.
you should get in the hares. And then on the men's side, 20, maybe 22, 23 hours. If you're going to run that, like, why not? I mean,
Why not give it a try?
unless there's some circumstance where you really need to have a pacer, or yeah, something else that just is kind of a factor for you.
But
But
like
yeah,
you're saying, it's everyone's race for themselves, right? And if those features, that morning start or the fact that you want to share it with some pacers makes a huge difference for you, and you don't care about, like, I don't care about competing. Like, I'm gonna go out there and do this event, and this is for me and for the people that I'm running with. And everyone has personal reasons, and I totally respect that. I just
yeah,
see I see people competing really well in the tortoise, and thinking like, oh man, I wonder how they would do. This year, for example, there was a woman, Kat Robinson, who was potentially going to win the tortoise division outright. Like, she was
yeah,
in the lead of the tortoise race. She ended up, I think, just behind the top man in the tortoise race. But it'd been like,
second
man,
overall.
yeah. I mean, she's from Fruta. I mean, I think she's good friends with Ryan Sullivan, who we interviewed for Leadville. But again, like, I saw them posting about it. I was like, man, potential outright win right here, and that's pretty amazing too. And maybe she wanted to have pacers and do kind of those other things as well.
Yeah.
But
I think there are also some people who run it first as a tortoise and then decide they're going to come back. I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe, Reagan Sykes, I
okay,
think her last
yeah,
name is Sykes,
yep,
she was a
from
tortoise
Colorado
last
Springs.
year. Yep. And then was a hare this year. So maybe just multiple year, kind of voyage into Run Rabbit Run and see if I can do it as a tortoise and then put myself in it the next year. So yeah,
I think it's a really interesting feature of the race, and the race
it is.
directors talked about it leading in. Like the tortoises love being able to like see the hares race unfold
Oh yeah,
out there
it's
in the event. They're out there in the event, 40 miles in, and they're getting to see this person pass and this person pass, and that would absolutely be fun.
yeah, and I mean even those fast tortoises, tortuga, Zoe and I were trying to figure out what the heck how you tortitians what you say, but basically they're yeah they like if you're a hare, sometimes when you're coming into Olympian, you see the lead tortoise going back out, and so you can also cheer for a tortoise who's doing great.
Sure.
So yeah, a couple other things just to mention from listeners. Someone wanted us to just highlight how amazing and underrated Rich Lockwood is. Definitely, he's a super strong athlete, and I mean, he's got this race figured out because I saw him at multiple points during the race. I actually saw him at the front with Tyler Green right around Fish Creek, and Tyler left the aid station before him, so he had they came in together, and then he put about a minute on him in the aid station. But Rich just kind of was doing his own thing, and man, I guess to win by as much as he did, he was able to turn it on for like those last 10-20 miles, which is just mad respect. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean he's had great results here at Run Rabbit. He's got good results at his other races too. So what's the petition now? Do we need to see Rich at like a Black Canyon or a Canyon? So we need to see him at a golden ticket race next.
I kind of feel like maybe he's like leaning toward like hard rock.
I could see
'Cause
that.
maybe he likes this, I think he likes this kind of like big mountain stuff. And so maybe that's his plan is the hard rock, the hard rock attempt. Um, and I don't know, could be a Dale's pick because sometimes winners of this race get into
That's
hard rock.
that's very true. That's very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rich is
Um,
a great athlete.
he is. He's awesome. Super nice guy. We also had some comments just about, the elite women running alone through the night, no
Mm,
pacer. Is it scary? Is it intimidating? I think you're going to get a lot of different answers on this depending on who you talk to. My good friend Zoe Rome, who was sixth last year, she loved it. That was like her favorite part. She absolutely loved it. It was like super empowering for her to run in through the night by herself, to get weird, as she says. And she really just embraced that aspect of it and felt like that was kind of like her advantage was, I love this. I love running at night, love running by myself, just getting in a zone. And then I've heard others say that, they didn't feel like they were ever really alone because there were always kind of some tortoises around and headlamps around. I had someone tell me that they, actually good another friend, Amber Ferraro, heard kind of some people just making some crazy noise on four-wheelers out in the middle of, nowhere up by Summit Lake, and kind of freaked her out just because, yeah, you're kind of vulnerable. Um, I don't know. Whistle might not do a lot for you in that situation if there's bad intentions. So it's like, yeah, I think it can be definitely scary.
well, and it's
Um,
it's an American culture thing to have pacers just in general at races, and in most cases, the nighttime is the later miles of most events that start in the morning. So most hundreds in the United States, you would absolutely be able to have a pacer if you wanted one.
Yeah.
And, that's definitely an issue to, fully respect everybody's feelings on that. Like it could be, like you're saying, it could be empowering for some person, or it could be something that feels like a dangerous situation. And so, I have, no qualm. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know that they'll change the rules necessarily, because I think that that's part of how they've outlined the race for the hares. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, yeah, it's of course it's a little bit of male privilege to like I am
We've got a
right
visitor.
to not
Henry.
have that be a something that was a concern.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hi, Emery. Emery's joining us. It's getting close to bedtime. All right. So we saw 5 men wearing the Tectons, or one of our good friends, Justin Kraft, who is a finisher of this race, and who decided to jump in and pace someone. He's like king pacer of the year this year,
Nice.
even though it wasn't on his training plan. So he saw a bunch of people wearing the Tecton threes, Hoku Tecton threes. So wondering how that went. He was wondering how that went for them. I don't know, because I don't wear that shoe, but my husband wore that shoe, and he did say that it was great. Maybe just a tad bit unstable on the very technical downhill on Fish Creek.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's due to the stack height, yeah, or just kind of how the shoe holds your foot. But that was his only complaint. If it wasn't for that section, thought it would be a great shoe for the race.
That reminds me that, so Jim Walmsley's been running in a prototype of this shoe for many years. And I loved his description about some of the prototypes. He said, some of the prototypes, they were a wild ride, is how he categorized it.
Really?
And he said that the production version of the Tecton X3 was a little bit more stable. But just that comment of like, hey man, it might feel like a wild ride on some of these downhill or some of these like more technical sections. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, people are clearly using it as a 100-mile shoe. It's going to be light. It's going to, have a lot of those features that you're going to want. I don't remember Run Rabbit as one that we necessarily pass a lot of water crossings. So is it like a shoe that you get wet over and over again at Run Rabbit? Probably not really, right? So,
No,
um,
unless it's raining, I don't think there's
yeah,
really any water
yeah.
crossings. So yeah, yeah. Um, okay. Any speculations on why there isn't a bigger elite field despite the massive prize purse?
I mean, the biggest thing is that it's 2 weeks away from UTMB, and let's
I
be
think that's
honest,
one of
right now
the
UTMB is the championship event that most of the definitely most of the sponsored runners are probably encouraged to go to. So
Mhm.
if a runner is not running, I mean, you're not really going to double back off of kind of any of the events at UTMB. Even if you were to run like OCC or CCC, you're not going to double back with 100 in 2 weeks. So that's probably the biggest factor, and the thing that it will continue to compete with year in and year out.
Yeah, I agree. I think, probably also from a sponsorship standpoint, I would say the sponsors maybe care more about UTMB at this point, and therefore you may be incentivized by your sponsor from a bonus standpoint to where that, prize purse is not something that is necessarily a decision maker for you. So maybe Run Rabbit Run is like the 100 miler that attracts the best of the,
Up and coming.
borderline yeah, pros, or pros who, just aren't making huge bonuses from a Hoka or a, Solomon or something like that. And that's kind of an interesting case study of like, I mean, it is oftentimes where we kind of see like new people that we're like, whoa, who is that? And it is a launching point for so many people, I think, to kind of get that visibility. So that's pretty cool. even if it just serves, that purpose. But I do think there's some interesting people I would like to see run it, because it'd be cool to see what the times, what kind of times could be run
Yeah, I mean,
by.
I love that Leah ran it this year, right? Like she
Yeah,
wasn't going to do a UTMB event
and
because
Tyler.
and Tyler because well, yeah, exactly. But she wasn't going to do that, so I was like, okay, this is a great year to do Run Rabbit, and I hope it's not a one and done for Leah because I really think that this course suits her skills and um, for a while it looked like she was potentially catching up to Tyler Green and potentially making her way into the top five. So
That would have been
again,
crazy.
it would have been awesome. But it was great performances by the women all around, and just to see a course record and a near course record in the same year was great. So
Yeah, I think just to kind of close things out, a couple things. One, who would you like to see run Rabbit? Who do you think would do well at this kind of course? And while you think about that,
Okay.
I will just say that, like, we did have a Mountain Outpost live stream. That was great. We did do some pre-race interviews. We decided to, record a post race kind of recap, just hopefully to kind of round things out and create some more conversation around Run Rabbit and give some visibility to some of the races that aren't giving as much media coverage. So hopefully that, it served its purpose. And if people have thoughts on it, if people have run it, tell us about your experience. I heard there were some moose on the course this year. I don't know exactly where, but one fun story is that, as my son Stowe and I were walking my husband into Olympian, knowing his race was kind of done, we walked past a little bridge, and Stowe looks over and then looks back and says, hey guys, just so you know, there's a bear over there. And we were, and I was like, what? And I start running, even though my husband can't run. I'm like running. I start running. And then
You're
I'm like,
sacrificing Graham.
and then I go, and then I'm like, wait, still, are you sure? I don't think you saw a bear. Are you sure? Then this guy comes and passes us and he's like, hey, did you guys see that bear with the cubs back there?
Oh
And I'm
my,
like, what?
that's insane.
And so Stowe said it wasn't a very big bear, but it was definitely like pawing up against a tree, and he thought it was a dog, but he was like, yeah, it was a bear. So there can definitely be some wildlife. And that was pretty close to town too. So
Awesome.
yet another factor.
All right. Well, I thought a little bit about your question,
Okay.
and I do think that as opposed to like people who do really well on the very, very gnarly mountain races, like a hard rock or even a UTMB, I think that Run Rabbit actually lends itself to runners who are doing well at like a Western state. So I would love to see like a Tim Tollefson come out and do Run Rabbit.
Yeah, Tim.
I would love to, everyone's going to say, I want to see Jim Walmsley run some course, but I'm saving that card for, I want to see Jim Walmsley go to Leadville
Yeah, I
before I
know.
want to see him go to Run Rabbit. So I'm going to save that
Timo.
card. But I do think, I think that those Western States runners, and Tyler kind of proved it, right? He's a perennial high
Mhm.
finisher at Western States, and he was a top five and competing kind of for the win. Here at the race this year. So Tim Tollefson's going to be my vote on the guys' side, and then on the ladies' side, I would love to see like Ruth Croft come out and do Run Rabbit. She just completed her first 100-mile distance at UTMB, and
Yep.
admittedly ran a very conservative first half to Courmayeur, and she rocketed up her way through the women's field to finish behind Katie Scheid. But I think a course like Run Rabbit, like I don't know how many hours under a course record she could go, but I think that it would be amazing to see an international runner like Ruth come out to Run Rabbit.
Nice. Okay. All right. I have a couple.
Okay, let's hear
I'll
yours.
just go along your I'll kind of tag along to the Tim Tolfson train and just say that Debo should come run it, because
Okay, that's great. That's a good one
I
for
mean
sure.
Dylan would do great. I
He's
think
just
he'd
like
do great at this race.
he's a mountain bro.
Yeah. I
Um,
think he'd do awesome.
yeah,
I think it'd be fun to see him run it, and I think he'd enjoy it. And then on the women's side, we'll just stick with kind of masters athletes. I'll say Ida Nielsen.
Okay. Yeah, get that.
Be cool to
She's
see
got
her.
the high altitude, the Flagstaff base, so the
Yeah,
altitude's not going to be an issue for her. Like that feels probably like, you know, trail running terrain from Flagstaff a lot. Like, you know.
yeah, yeah. I think that'd be a fun pairing, and it'd be cool to see more international. We saw, Oni, who we
Oni,
interviewed before the race finished,
good.
Japanese runner. So that's pretty cool to see some international folks coming out to Steamboat.
Yeah, nice job with that interview. I saw you guys using a little bit of technology to go back and forth with the
He was
questions. So
he was very gracious, and yeah, he was very nice. And I kind of followed his wife along the course too. We were next to each other in a few of the aid stations, and she was very dialed. He was eating a lot of fruit. She had all the stuff laid out. There were some big charts, like pacing charts. What do I need at aid station? Very like it was very organized. So it
nice.
was kind of cool just to see how they do it, how it's different. But that was one thing I noticed is he ate a lot of like pineapple and
Oh,
like there was like
okay.
a lot of fruit. Um, so yeah, it was cool.
That seemed big at UTMB too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you. You've got Women Can on.
Yeah.
What do you have going with Women Can right now? I like the black.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So we just released or opened the pre-order for the next drop, which is sweatshirts for the fall.
Sweet.
So there are two styles. There is a crop. This is a crop hoodie. Yay! The
Nice.
drop shoulder in black. And then there's also like this gray acid wash crew neck that's a little bit more it's not oversized, but it's like a crew style, full length, basically unisex, and it has a smaller women can right here. So
Okay.
kind of just something a little different, the same logo, but a little bit smaller, a little more understated. So those are the two items that are for sale right now, and they'll ship out early October. And then I'm really excited because I'm going to start kind of a little bit of a community initiative here, because I think the whole purpose of this is to like spread the message of women doing cool things. And so it'll be opened up soon, but people can send in their stories about themselves, about another woman. If you're a guy that wants to send in a story about a woman doing something really cool, I would love to start to collect those and then just share them with everybody, so that we can kind of continue to just share some of the really cool things that people are doing, whether they're in athletics or not. So that's the plan for continuing to build it out.
Awesome. We'll lead with that on our next podcast, and we
Okay.
will we will have some race podcasts upcoming. So
Yes.
stay tuned. And if you made it this far, please subscribe to Ultra Uncovered everywhere you find it: YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to it on your podcast. Even if you don't watch them on YouTube, just go to the YouTube and hit the little subscribe button. It will help us a lot. So as we're
Yeah, we
trying to
want to
get
we
people
want
to
to
see these.
keep getting the word out, growing it. So as everybody says, subscribe, review, do whatever you need to. Leave us some comments because that's super fun. Like I loved hearing the questions from people. So
Yeah,
if there are races that you want us to cover or topics that you want us to talk about, guests you want us to have on, our next race is a really cool one that many of you know, and I'm super excited about our potential guests for that. So stay tuned, and that'll be coming up probably in the next couple weeks.
well, this was
All
fun.
right.
See you next time.
Thanks. Bye.